I could talk about Africa and, science in Africa, science entrepreneurship in Africa for forever.
Yeah.
Excited about the field. We haven't even begun to like even identify where the tip of the iceberg is. It's going to be a Wakanda in the future. It's going to
Wakanda. That's hilarious. Osayi, man, pleasure having you on the show, brother. Since our last conversation, if you could look in my eyes right now, it's probably a little bit red, but that's just from lack of sleep and just excitement, really. So it's a pleasure having you on, the work you're doing. I just want to dive into everything. And I know we don't have enough time today, so we just have to get right into it and get as active as possible. Pleasure having you on the show today.
Let's jump in. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I suppose the most appropriate thing to do is to start with your background and what got you to the space you're in right now, projects that you're working on. And then from there, we could dive into some of the more interesting things, even though you're very interesting yourself, obviously, but then we could dive into this conversation of what's going on in Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. My background, I don't know how far back to go, but
let's go back to the last 2 years.
Yeah. Most recently, I was startup director at One Valley. When we started, it was Nest GSV, and then GSV Labs. Now it's One Valley in Redwood City. At the time, it was the second largest innovation center in Bay Area, second in size to Plug and Play. That was a wonderful experience. Introduced me to the world of startups, and I never looked back. So while I was there supporting over 100 companies, best job ever. I didn't have much of a life, but I absolutely loved it deeply and intensely. Probably a little too much. And then it was actually while I was working there one night that a group of entrepreneurs from Africa who were, I think, part of Lines Africa, which is a group that takes a group of startups that participate in a pitch competition that do probably the top performing companies at the pitch competition, bring them over to the Bay and take them on a tour to a bunch of different places. And so one of those places was GSV Labs that they stopped at. And I remember people asking me after that, I said, wow, what's going on in Africa? I had zero clue, man. I was like, what? Like, what? I have no idea. Well, let me look that up for you real quick and then share that with you. But yeah, that's really what sparked the interest for me. It's like, okay, wait a minute, let me go find out. So the next year, in 2015, I hopped on a plane and came out here. And that's really, I guess earlier that year, I had set up the firm. I decided I want to go into venture capital because I had some amazing deal flow from an elite micro VC in the Bay Area. And I wanted to put together a fund that gave Africans access to these deals, right? Basically access to, the Bay Area and some of the best deals in the Bay Area. But I quickly started to feel like I was from the future at the time. This was 2015, July. We talked about this, and I was speaking to a gentleman one day, and he went like, so why do you want to start a university? I have never been knocked off a stool so hard. Like, I was like, what have I been talking about these past few minutes, right? And he's like, well, VC, vice chancellor. I'm like, oh my God, this is not working out. Because in Nigeria, the leader of the university the title is the vice chancellor. Like in the States, it's the president of the university. And I was just like, you know what? Thank you so much for your time. It's been great. Yeah, that was just like, are you seriously? Like, this is where we're at right now. It's 2015. I'm thinking, we need to, but it was super early. In fact, I think reports that have been tracking the African startup ecosystem, I think 2015 is probably the earliest anyone has data for. So that was a really, really early days. So I was way ahead of my time. I think about 55 deals were done that year or something. It's about $280 million or so invested. So yeah, so did that. Realized that, okay, kind of ahead of the curve, a little too much. And started to look around, got really intrigued by the entrepreneurs on the continent in Nigeria, because the zeal was incredibly palpable. And I was like, wow, I haven't seen this much fire ever, right? And I'm coming from the Bay Area, right? So I'm like, whoa.
So you're saying there was more zeal in Nigeria than there was in the Bay Area, in Silicon Valley and all. Wow.
100%. Yeah. So I'm looking at these founders like, man, if these guys had the Bay Area, life would be good for a lot of people. Life would be really, really good. They'd be able to transform the lives of many, many people. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to support these guys instead, right? And so I started to participate in the ecosystem and just kind of immerse myself. Worked with the government for a little bit to strengthen, refine the startup ecosystem strategy. Did a bunch of boot camps and trainings, and spoke a bunch of founders, and simultaneously, leaving the Bay Area, or shortly before I left the Bay Area, we run like 2 AI hackathons, right? And at the time, there weren't a lot of conversations about AI on the continent. I remember talking about it with a bunch of entrepreneurs, and they're just like, what? Like, that sounds like so far away. It's like, why would we be working on it? Why would we be using AI to build? And I'm like, and that was just like red flags, because I'm off the mindset at the time and now that Africa needs to have a seat at the table, right? Otherwise, the continent will be consumers forever, right? Get a seat at the table, earn a seat at the table, build a damn seat, stuff it at the table, something. But and so my focus shifted to, okay, how do we accelerate the adoption of AI on the continent? And so that's kind of what I was always leaning towards in my conversations with anyone, and found 3 groups that had been doing the same thing across the continent. So Data Science Africa out of Kenya had been doing this since, I think, 2013, right? Really building a community of data science and AI enthusiasts to accelerate the adoption of AI on the continent, primarily in that region of East Africa. And then I think in 2017, Deep Learning in Daba, same thing, similar group out of South Africa, which has incredibly high quality of deals of companies. And then the following year in 2018, Data Science Nigeria, which I've been running the AI bootcamp since its founding in 2018, supporting the more entrepreneurially minded members of the community. And fortunately, they all knew about each other and kind of understood the value of collaborating. And this was a continent-wide mission, and it wasn't just for any one group; it was everyone to support each other, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun. Fun to see that collaboration happen. And thankfully they existed, because I'm just one person, but these guys are on a whole other level, pulling in researchers from all over the world, like brand name researchers, pulling in enthusiasts from all across the continent, doing an immense job, incredibly important job, where today there probably isn't a founder who's not using AI in some way, or at least familiar with it, right? So really excited about that. And so that allowed me, with that foundation built, it allowed me to turn my focus to what I always wanted to do, which was propel the continent to the forefront of innovation. And so that's the current focus of Ripple VC, which is more focused on like science and advanced technologies. So biotech and space and quantum ML, probably a couple of years away, but yeah, looking at those very closely.
Okay. I like where you ended off there, because that's the gear I was looking to dive into, just from our conversations and whatnot. And I came across an article by nature.com where Dr. Ife Inubo, a molecular geneticist from Nigeria, states, and she quotes this in this article. She says, Africa shoulders 25% of the global disease burden. We unfortunately only just contribute about 2% of the world's research output, which is quite abysmal. She then goes on and saying, we only account for like 1.3% of research spending, and we only produce 0.1% of all patents. So as you can see, in terms of that funding and the output, it's really poor. And when we now talk about the human resource for science, the African scientists, we have 198 per million African scientists on the continent. When you compare this to the UK or the US with 4,500 per million, there's obviously a lot of gap there. And the issue with this is that when we fail to invest in African science, it then becomes very difficult to develop homegrown, sustainable solutions to African problems, end quote. My question for you, Osayi, is how do we produce more scientists while maintaining them simultaneously?
Yeah, so, yeah, I know the pain. And I learned about the initial stat with the 2% from founder of 54 Gene, which is one of my favorite companies ever. And what they're looking to do is include more of the African genome, right, into this pool of data, so that the drugs of the future incorporate more information from the genetics of Africans, which I think is a superb mission to be on. Part of why, I mean, first of all, the African startup ecosystem is extremely young, right? If we're looking at it from 2015, it's a bit of a toddler, all right? And I think part of why the gap is still so wide is because we haven't started looking at science entrepreneurship as sexy. And I think that is also driven by the fact that there aren't a ton of investors who are focused in those areas, right? Thanks to the success of a few fintech companies, that's what's become synonymous with investing in Africa or the African startup ecosystem, which is great. There's definitely lots more to be done, and it's good to.
But it's a good start. But it's a good start.
Yeah, it's a great start. It starts from somewhere, right? And someone and some people will attract attention to other areas, and that will build out too. And I'm hoping that Ripple VC and other investors who jump in drive that interest in the science and advanced technology on the continent. I think part of the problem also is the number of research universities on the continent. I don't know if there's any data in that article, but I'm sure if you looked into it, you will find that we have a much smaller proportion of research universities on the continent versus total number of universities or versus population, right?
Right.
And it's a great start. There are 16, I know of 16 research universities that are part of the African Research University Association, a rural network. And they're working collaboratively to address a number of trillion-dollar issues, as I like to call them. Access to healthcare, right? Food security, right? Climate change, things that are truly important to things that could lead to an inflection point for human progress. So I think those gaps exist because for those reasons. It's just that there's not a whole lot of support for entrepreneurs right now who are looking to commercialize their products. And I have to highlight the work of Launch Lab here out of Stellenbosch University. A Launch Lab is the incubator out of Stellenbosch University that's really focused on helping the more entrepreneurially minded scientists on campus build businesses around the products, right? So bringing that support to these scientists to help them at the products, which is an amazing lead for other universities to copy and hopefully improve over time. I think that would help everyone. So those are the reasons that I think that.
And you know what's interesting too, when we look at R&D in the United States or even in the UK, it's expensive. Matter of fact, a lot of investors that are investing in deep tech or patents and things along those lines, they're not thinking about this company is going to create this return in 2 years or 5 years. They're thinking 10, 15 years. They're thinking down the road as to what could come from this R&D. Africa doesn't have that. So sometimes even when I look at this, I'm thinking to myself, is there a shortage of talent, or is it just the resources? And I can't help but conclude, I think it's the resources, because the second part of my question is, how do we maintain the talent? How do we maintain them? Look, I'm talking to you, brother. You were just in California. Now you're in Nigeria, right? You were a talent that left, but fortunately have come back. Here's the next part of this question too, though. When we're talking about R&D and all of that, one thing that I've come to realize or observe through conversations with investors or through research, investors are trying to figure out ways to not just put money into Africa, but to quickly get it out of Africa. And right now, because of infrastructure or government issues, it's kind of tough to get your money out of Africa. So then what incentivizes investors that are looking to get their money out of Africa already to want to invest into R&D, science, and all of those things? It seems to be contradictory. Am I wrong?
Right. No, you're right on several things there. There definitely is an incongruency, but I like to think of every investor as different, right? Some just won't ever get biotech, for instance, or space. Just like, whoa, I want the next health tech, digital EMR thing, right? Or a payments company. They can wrap their minds around that, and that's what they're comfortable with, and that's what excites them, right? And some people, so that's, when I started with the few exits that have happened on the continent, there really mostly in fintech, if not all of them, or the major ones, right? And so just there's, the natural outcome of that is more fintech investors will be attracted to the continent, looking for that. I want to be part of the next one, right? There hasn't been any big deep tech investments, let alone exits. So it'll take a while. I think it'll start from, perhaps other scientists, as angel investors who understand the value of the work of the scientists on the continent. And I just want to write a little check in some way to support them. So that's again, highlights the importance of the work that Launch Lab is doing, because that's a place for potential investors, anyone who's asking questions and wondering what is out there, to come and take a look at the companies that they're working with, right? And say, oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, okay, I'll probably wait a year, or maybe the next cohort, or here's a check, right? You'll get different levels of excitement. But yeah, I think that's what needs to be done. And then you mentioned something earlier about limitations. Absolutely, resources. This is expensive, incredibly expensive area, and the rate of failure is immense as it is in traditional internet technology.
Yeah.
It's just super costly, right? So failure just is mind-blowingly expensive. You probably invest $50,000 in a startup and it dies. You're like, yeah, good, right? But when the deep tech startup, yeah, they absorb a lot of cash, and so you find that it's usually the universities or the governments, the federal government or wherever the university is, that comes and supports.
Yeah, but with that, Osayi, I wish federal government was on par. I think a lot of what's going on in Africa today is because the government isn't necessarily on par with the evolution of what's happening in these various markets. And,
Yeah.
I may even accuse some of not really caring for the countries or the people.
Yeah.
But we've seen places like, for instance, Egypt. Egypt, they're investing back into the entrepreneurs. The government has, for instance, incubation programs like Phallic, right? That was funded and developed by the government for the purpose of accelerating technology. We look into South Africa, we see similar trends, right? But this is not consistent across various countries, right? So how do we leave it up to the government? Well, my suggestion is to not even put the money in the hands of the government, but to give it to the entrepreneurs, because where I'm from, for instance, Liberia, stories on stories of barrels going missing, no accountability, money coming in, resources coming in, and disappearing. So how do we then continue to give these sort of individuals the upper hand and give them capital to take care of the people when it appears that they only care for themselves? It seems like then we're in a conundrum.
Yeah. Don't get me started on the lack of a progressive mindset among leaders of African nations, mine especially. I could spend energy on that, or I could choose to divert all of my energy towards supporting all the great founders that I come in contact with, right? And that's really what I choose to do. I just lay 100% of my faith in the future of the continent at the feet of founders, right? I have zero, at most, rounded up 0% that they would use.
And that's after rounding up.
They're complete. I mean, it's like trying to explain differential calculus to a sheep. They get it, you know, and they can't.
Hey, you're going harder on this than I did. I thought I was going too hard.
Don't get me started, man. Don't get me started. Oh, oh my God. Yeah. No, I founders, it's part of their DNA to want to solve problems, right? It's not for politicians, right? So you can't rely on that. If you're looking for progress, if you're truly looking for genuine progress, you're not going to be looking at politicians. You're going to be looking at founders, you know, and the fact that, you know, more and more capital is flowing to the continent, you know, and thankfully we're not, or I guess maybe because I'm just not, it's just not on my radar anymore, but you know, I'm not hearing of these AIDS anymore. Maybe I just stopped caring so much that it just doesn't.
Oh, can we have another conversation just on the AIDS? Look, whew.
Yeah.
Continue.
Yeah. I'm really, but yeah, it's really about supporting the founders. And, you know, to that point, recently, you know, joined forces with really a growth hacker group disguised as a venture capital firm called Expert Dojo in Santa Monica, California, where they have the most mind-boggling growth program for founders. It's like walking through fire, or like being reborn through fire. It's an incredible program that straps rockets to the back of companies. It's pretty wild, man. And so that's, you know, I decided to partner with them so that I could bring some of that to the continent. Because, you know, and they also wanted to, you know, done a few Africa deals, and I was super excited. And I was like, yeah, it's a match made in heaven, because I want to support the best founders on the continent as best as I can. And if there's a group that's coming with like 80 plus subject matter experts and like 5,000 investors, it's like, holy cow, I need for every single awesome founder on the continent to have a piece of that action. So yeah, so that's what I'm focusing on. That's what I'm choosing to focus my energy on.
Whew, you're about to make me bounce out of my seat right now with what you're talking about. Man, there's something about progress and potentials of what's going on in Africa that just excites me once the conversation comes out. And you know, I hate going down the path, or should I say I dislike going down the path of only speaking of some of the negativities when it comes to government, this and that in Africa. I want to take the Dubai or the Middle East approach and only market the good things coming out of Africa. So, or let's say the American approach. Everyone wants to come to America. No one hears about all the negative stuff going on. This is the land of milk and honey. Rightfully so. Entrepreneurship is encouraged. And coming here, honestly, it has benefited my life significantly. And I'm forever thankful and grateful for America. Now, when it comes to Africa, I want us to follow a similar approach. So I ask you this before we get off, because I know you're very busy. What are some highlights? What's going on in the continent right now? What can we be excited about?
Oh my God. Honestly, there isn't a loud megaphone. There isn't a megaphone loud enough. I think everyone should be incredibly excited about the quality and finally the ramping up of companies using science and advanced technologies to solve trillion-dollar problems. There are some really special companies out there. I mentioned 54 Gene earlier, blew my mind. That mission is just, yes, right. And then there is Hypernova Space, Hypernova out of Cape Town, which is a space company. I don't know, you know, the last time you heard of space in Africa in the same sentence, but especially one that's due to launch this year. I mean, the kinds of things that are going on in this place, it's kind of wild. So Hypernova, they're building satellite that operates in VLEO, very low Earth orbit, that takes high resolution images, twice the resolution of low Earth orbit cameras. But they solve a key problem first. Anyone can build a satellite and throw it up into space, right? And before you know it, it turns into debris and just like metal junk floating around. And because of the new space movement, there's a crap ton of startups out there that are building satellites, and it's only a matter of time before that comes to the continent. I understand there's a new one out there in Kenya, I believe, who's also set to launch soon. So super excited about that. But the important thing that they focused on first was electric propulsion, which to me, that's like the Tesla of satellites. You know what I mean? It's like they're doing to satellites what Elon did.
Break that down a little bit. I need some sharpening here. What's going on?
Yeah, so satellites need fuel, right? Float around. Fuel is heavy, right? And that shortens the lifespan because it's heavy, shorter time, burns, and then just kind of floats around, right? Or it could probably return into space if it's that return to the ground if it's that advanced. Otherwise, it just floats around in space. What Hypernova's done is they've incorporated propulsion system that uses metal as fuel in space. So all that debris, all that satellites floating around, they can all be fuel to Hypernova's satellites. Insane. And so satellites.
This has been done in other countries, or is this the first time of this type of technology being used coming from Africa?
First in Africa.
First in Africa or first in the world?
First in Africa.
Okay, first in Africa.
Yeah,
okay.
Companies around the world that have built alternative propulsion, some electric as well.
Okay.
Yeah, from Africa for sure. First from Africa. So we have that. We have another one of my favorite companies out of Ghana, Yamachi Biotechnology, and they are increasing access to precision oncology, right? Using cutting edge, like really advanced technologies, immunogenomics, bioinformatics, and AI to accelerate the development of cancer detection and cure strategies, which is, I mean, yeah. Anyways, so I just love hearing about things like that. It just completely blows my. I'm just so excited about things like that because this is what I live for. It's like, yes, let's get to the forefront of innovation. Let's show our very best talent, right? And it's right there with the rest of the world, right? And what's really special about these types of companies is that their products make these companies truly global, because these technologies exist in other parts of the world, but will be way out of reach for the average African. So they're not exactly global, are they? With the proportion of Africans to the rest of the planet, it's a huge market you're leaving out.
Yeah,
and it's not global if you're only North America, Europe, and Asia. I don't think so. I mean, a bunch of markets for sure, but I wouldn't call that global. So I think that part of what we're going to see come out of Africa, truly global deep tech companies. I'm so excited for that future. And they recently released their first product, Sheba, which is it's like an HPV self-testing kit, at-home kit for ladies. Crazy to see. I'm loving that. Recently closed $3 million seed round. 54 Gene some years ago, I think 2018. $4.5 million seed round. After that, I forget what their Series A was, and I'm blanking out. Probably 10 or 15 million, something juicy like that. We have Avion out of Ethiopia. That's revolutionizing medical supply chain. I don't know if you're familiar with the company Zipline. Their service involves shooting off like a drone off a ramp, kind of like a giant catapult, shoot it off a ramp, and then it's guided to where it needs to fly over the target area, and it lets the package, blood samples, medical supplies, drops, and then finds its way back. What Avion is doing is building autonomous hybrid drones that could just vertically take off and head out to where they're going, drop the package, and come right back home. It is wicked cool. Secured a fantastic exclusive contract with the government. They're doing, these guys, man, they're just doing amazing, amazing things all over the place. One of my other favorite, I have a lot of favorite companies. One of my other favorite companies, Cova DX, also out of Ghana / the US, harnessing AI to combat inequities in health. Founder has sickle cell disease, and so he's built this product that monitors and diagnoses red blood cell diseases, like red blood cell, sickle cell disease, at a fraction of the cost that it would normally, and also in a fraction of time using AI. So again, a truly global company, right? Because now every African can, who's, has sickle cell disease, and hopefully in the future, even more expanded to more red blood cell diseases, can, get tested and get monitored cheaper and be able to afford it. And the number of lives that could save, I mean, it makes it all worth it, right? And COVID DX is one of the companies that came out of Expert Dojo. So, bro, there's Africa right now. I mean, fintech is great, but if you really want to get excited, just try to find out about what's going on in the science field. It is wild. It is all over the map, crazy. And I'm just so excited. I'm just so excited, looking forward to the time when science is synonymous with Africa. Science entrepreneurship is synonymous with Africa. That would be a really good time.
I see it. I see it happening. I see it happening, and I see no reasons why it won't happen. Especially with brothers like yourself. There's, man, I've had some of the most remarkable conversations these last couple months that literally continues to fuel my energy and drive. But that's a whole nother conversation. For now, I'm super appreciative of you joining us and just having this conversation, sharing some insights, what's going on, what you're working on. Man, you left America, went to Nigeria to further the work. Hey, I commend you. Yeah, I commend you for that. So, I'm excited to see where your journey is headed, and I know you're working on some really remarkable stuff. So, I'm expecting to have another conversation on another podcast with you. We didn't have enough time to geek out, nerd out, or anything like that. We just scratching the surface. So, for whatever that's worth, I'm super thankful. And man, keep doing what you're doing, bro. Keep doing it and just continue to kick ass, man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really enjoy these conversations. And I could talk about Africa and, science in Africa, science entrepreneurship in Africa for forever. Excited about the field. We haven't even begun to even identify where the tip of the iceberg is. It's going to be a Wakanda in the future. it's going to
Wakanda. That's hilarious. No, for sure, man. This is very good, man. Thank you, Osayi. See you in another EP or masterclass or just conversation.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much.